Oh man, what a great campsite, huh?
Yep, it sure is beautiful.
You know, it is a little warm. I think I'm gonna turn on the AC before bed just to cool the camper down.
Oh no, you can't do that. AC only runs on shore power or a generator.
What's shore power?
Shore power is that pole at the campsite. It has a 15 or 30 amp connection where you plug in your camper.
Huh, well that's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Popcorn. Hey Nicole,
Yeah,
I was gonna cook this popcorn in the microwave, but the microwave doesn't work.
it's the same as the AC. You need either shore power or a generator in order to work.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Oh man, I need some coffee. Hey Nicole,
What?
the coffee machine isn't working.
Yeah, all the outlets are the same as the AC or the microwave. You need shore power or the generator.
Well, then what can I use?
So you can use anything that runs off of the battery or the propane. So the lights, the furnace, the fridge, or any of the USB ports.
All right, I got it. Hey Nicole, the lights don't work. I thought you said the lights worked with 12 volt.
Hold on. Yep, they aren't working.
I told you it wasn't working. What are we gonna do now?
I'm on it.
I love the chase and the hunt.
Hi, my name's Daryl, and as you could tell from the intro, yeah, Nicole and I, we were a little confused when we first got our camper and how everything worked. So today, I'm gonna cover the basics in the electrical system in your camper. I'm also gonna do some basic troubleshooting, as well as kind of cover some of the problems that we've had with our A-liner and how we fix them. So first of all, it's really important to understand within most campers, you have two discrete electrical systems. You have your 12 volt system, which is, kind of a low voltage system that is powered by the battery on your trailer. Then you have your 120 volt system, which you can really think more of like your household electrical system that powers some of the high voltage devices. Now, when thinking about these things, I'm not going to get into, some of the theories about electricity and talk about volts and current and wattage and all those things. But the one important thing to know is that your 12 volt system, yeah, you could get shocked and hurt by it, but it's probably not going to kill you. Whereas your 120 volt system, that's in a common household, yep, that could kill you and electrocute you. Now, I'm not saying not to worry about it. You really need to take your precautions whenever you're working with the electrical system in your camper. So disconnect your battery, make sure that you unplug from the 120 volt source that's coming into your camper. That way we can all be safe. So let's go ahead and go to the battery and talk about the 12 volt system just a little bit. All right, so your battery here, it's what provides 12 volt power to the low voltage devices inside of your camper. Typically those low voltage devices are your lights, your fan, your furnace, so the igniter and the blower of your furnace. If you have a 2 or 3 way fridge, it provides 12 volt power to that. You have your CO2 detectors, your USB outlets, as well as your water pump. So basically with the battery, you can power all of those devices. So, if you don't need AC power or you don't need to use your microwave and you want to camp off grid, yeah, your battery is going to do that. But, it's only going to power it a certain number of days. So depending on, if you have other sources to charge your battery, like solar, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you're going to be limited. So for sure, before you go camping, you're going to want to top off that battery. Typically, to top off the battery, you're going to plug your camper into a 120 volt source, like at your house or in your garage. We'll talk about that just a little bit later. Now, one thing of importance when you are using your battery, most A-liners and most campers come with lead acid batteries. And the lead acid battery has a certain characteristic. So when you're at 100%, it's going to have a certain voltage. And then as you drop, that voltage is going to get lower and lower. Typically, anything under 12.3 volts, you're going to be under 50%. And similar to a car battery, if you use that car battery and you fully extinguish it so it doesn't have any power left, you're going to cause damage to that battery. So it's really important that you monitor how much charge that battery has. So unfortunately, a lot of campers and the A-liner campers, they don't come with any sort of device for you to measure that, to measure that charge. And so let me show you how to do that really quick. So one way of measuring how much charge your battery has left is with a multimeter. So you basically turn that on, turn it on 20 volts here, and then you want to take the prong for the ground and put it on the ground, and then take the prong for the hot side and put that in here, and it's going to give you a reading. So in my particular instance right now, we are reading at about 13 volts. Now, so that's a really good charge. Now, I've got to say, I've actually got a lithium battery, and so I don't have the same kind of problems that folks that have a lead acid battery do. So I can extinguish my lithium battery without any worries, whereas a lead acid battery, you really should only go down to about 50%. Let me show you an easier way of getting your voltage inside the camper. So one of the easiest way to check the status of the voltage of your battery and for you to determine, kind of what percentage that you still have left of power is by getting one of these USB or 12 volt cigarette lighter adapters here. And what it's going to show you on the front of it, it actually has a USB port as part of it, but what it's going to show you is what the voltage is. So all you got to do, I think most A-liners have the cigarette lighter or 12 volt port right here that you just plug into. And then it's going to show you what the status of your battery is. Now this was showing 12.9 just a second ago, which matches really closely with what we read at the battery. There might be a little bit of loss going actually from the battery to inside of the trailer, but this is a really good device to have. A lot of A-liner owners, they will get installed in line to one of their 12 volt systems, something that mounts permanently in their trailers so they know the status of the battery all the time. But this is one device that you can just kind of plug in the morning to see what your status is. Plug it in a little bit later at night just to make sure that you aren't, causing problems with your battery. So let's talk about a couple of other tools for maintaining the health of your battery. The first thing that you might want to consider investing in is a trickle charger. So this trickle charger, if you have your camper in storage, what this does is it connects to the 120 volt system in your garage, and then you have these two leads that basically connect to your battery. And you can turn it on maintain, and basically it will just keep your battery topped off so you don't have to worry about any of the devices within your camper, like the CO2 detector that kind of continues to run over and over again, of it draining your battery. Second thing I would consider is installing a disconnect switch, a battery disconnect switch. So I installed this, and basically this cuts all the power going from the battery to inside the trailer. And so if you are in the middle of camping, if you want to make sure that nothing pulls power from your camper, you can turn this off, and then all the power from the battery going to the camper is turned off. In addition, we have this fuse right here. It's an inline fuse that goes from the battery, goes to the fuse, and then goes to the camper. So it, kind of protects the electrical system within the camper from getting over electrified, I guess you could say. But basically, to disconnect the fuse, you just pull this out, and then you pull the fuse out, and that cuts all the power that comes from the battery inside the trailer. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the high voltage system in your trailer, which is the 120 volt system. Now, this is the outlet that you use to plug your camper into 120 volt power. All ALiners come in with an electrical cord that you plug into here, and then on the other side comes with a 30 amp connector that you plug into a 30 amp circuit like on a campground. So let's talk about the devices inside your trailer that this powers, right? So if you've got an AC or a heat pump, it will provide power to those. If you have a microwave, that. Typically your refrigerator, if it's a 2 or 3 way fridge, you can power it off a 12 volt and propane, but then when you plug into power, it'll automatically switch to the 120 volt source. So that way you're not using your battery or your propane. And pretty much all of the electrical outlets, or all of the electrical outlets, the 3-pronged electrical outlets that you know about and love, will also provide power for those. So one kind of weird thing about powering your camper is what the RV industry calls it. They call it Sure Power. I'm not exactly sure why. They like to come up with names. I guess this actually comes from the marine industry, but the RV industry just took it and that's what they call it. So if somebody says, hey, are you connected to Sure Power? Basically they mean, are you connected to electrical within a campground? So you can say, yeah, I am. So now talking about campgrounds, typically most campgrounds have some sites with electrical service, if not all of them. Typically, for sure, you're going to have a 30 amp service, and which is what your ALiner uses, most small campers use. There's also a 50 amp service for your bigger rigs that might have multiple AEC units up on the roof. And then sometimes you might have like a 15 or 20 amp outlet, which is kind of just your common, electrical outlet that you use inside the house. So basically you just plug this guy, you plug it into your camper, okay? And then you take this side and you plug it into the 30 amp outlet. Now before you do that, it's really important that at, I think they call it a power pedestal at a campground, you'll always have breakers on those power pedestals. So before you plug in, you're gonna wanna turn that breaker off. Now before you do anything else, a lot of times campgrounds don't have the best power, so it's really wise to invest in a RV surge protector. I think I got this one for like 30 bucks or so on Amazon, but this just kind of protects your trailer and the sensitive electronics and electrical stuff in your trailer from those kind of surges and spikes in power. So basically this guy just plugs into here, okay? And then you just plug this into the pedestal power within the campground. Now, the other thing that you're gonna probably want to invest in, so after you plug this in and the breakers are off, then turn the breaker on within the campground, you should be good to go. The other thing that you're gonna want to invest in is this thing right here. So this is typically called, I think it's called a dog bone. I got this off Amazon as well. What this does is lets you plug your camper into a common 15 or 20 amp outlet within your house or within your garage. So I talked about topping off your battery. So how are you gonna do that, right? You have to plug your ALiner in to power before you go camping. And typically, most households, won't have a 30 amp outlet, or maybe they do with a dryer. But you can just use a regular outlet like this in your garage and then plug your ALiner in and basically fully use it. One of the things I do is like a day and a half beforehand, I'll plug our camper in. I'll turn the fridge on to get that fridge cool down. And then I'll also top off the battery at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of a good practice to get into. All right, so let's get into the troubleshooting part of this video. I think it's first important to understand that even though your 12 volt systems and 120 volt systems are two separate, different systems, that they do all kind of come together right here. So this is your power converter for the ALiner camper. Now, this is actually a little bit of an older power converter, and different trailers and actually different ALiners come with a little bit different power converter. But one thing that you should know about this box is it takes your 120 volt power and it converts it to 12 volt power. So for instance, when I talked about us plugging in to household power or Sure Power and the fact that it will then top off your battery, it can do this because it takes that 120 volt power, it converts it to 12 volt power, and then it's able to send power 12 volt to all the low voltage appliances within the camper, and it can also top off at the battery at the same time. So typically if you're in a campgrounds and maybe you're getting kind of low on battery, if you find an electrical outlet, and get in a site that has electricity for a night or so, you can top off that battery, and then you can just use your battery. And this is why at the house, before you go camping, you plug your A-liner in or your camper in. That way you can top off the battery. So let's look at the power converter a little bit. So typically it sits underneath the bed in most A-liners. You basically just, kind of hit this top panel here, and then you can pull it down. So when I talked about a separation, right, we have all of our 120 volt breakers over on this side, and then we have all of our 12 volt fuses over on this side. So you're probably very familiar with these breakers that are inside the house or outside the house on your electrical panel. And these are the fuses that are inside of your car, your 12 volt fuses that protect your electrical systems in the car. You have your battery and you have your alternator, and then you have your fuses right here. So if you are having problems with any particular 120 volt device inside of the camper, one of the things you can do is check the breakers just to make sure that they haven't been tripped. It's helpful to kind of know what breakers control what, but you can quickly do that and label them just by kind of turning it off and seeing which one it affects. But yeah, I mean, to troubleshoot, basically just turn them all off just to make sure that they haven't been tripped. Okay, and then turn them back all on again. Okay, and now you have power back to your camper. Your 12 volt fuses, they're a little bit more difficult to troubleshoot. Yeah, so the way the fuse works is you basically have this kind of cable that runs from one prong to the other prong, and then if that cable gets broken, it loses continuity, and so the fuse basically protects. And so each fuse is kind of rated for a certain voltage. So I think this one, I can't quite tell, I got to look at it a little bit closer. And they're color coded, so blue actually means 15 amps. So if a fuse gets something more than 15 amps, then that wire is going to break, and then it's going to shut down that connection. And so if you are having problems with any of the 12 volt devices within your camper, one of the things that you can do is check all the fuses just to make sure that it hasn't been blown. So let me show you a couple of ways of checking that. So the first way of checking that is just basically by pulling the fuse. Now, I would recommend that you disconnect your battery prior to pulling the fuse and inserting it in again, just to protect yourself and to protect your electrical system. But I'm assuming that I'm pulled one of these fuses out. And so now here's our fuse. And so you look really closely, and if you shine it up to the sun, that's really the best way of looking at it. And I think my camera, my iPhone, will probably do a good job of getting this, so let me record that. You can kind of see that wire going through the fuse, and you're basically looking for any sort of break in that. And if you have a break in that fuse, then you know you have to replace that fuse. So the one thing that you really want to get is an extra box of fuses. So I got this on Amazon for, I don't know, 15 bucks or 10 bucks or something like that. And this has all the kind of common fuses in it. And yeah, you're definitely probably going to use this on your camper. Just get a bunch of different fuses. And that way, one blown fuse doesn't totally ruin a camping trip. Now, another way that you can check your fuse is with the multimeter that we have here. So basically, you're going to want to check for continuity between this little prong right here and this little prong right here. And so if you notice, on these 12 volt fuses, you can actually get connection to the electrical contacts from inside the car or inside the fuse box. And so basically what you want to do is turn your multimeter to continuity, which is this one right down here. Okay, and you can check to make sure that is actually working just by taking the prongs and putting them together like so. And if you get a ding or a beep, that means there's continuity between these things. And so what you do is basically within the fuse box is you put one prong on one side and the other prong on the other side. And then if you get that little ringing, then you know that you have continuity and that fuse is good. Yeah, and so if you don't have a multimeter, there's a couple of really good uses for this inside the A-Liner camper. So I'd recommend that you get one of these and kind of know the basics and how to use it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little special bonus early tip here on the common problems within the A-Liner. So since we're checking fuses, I figured I'd cover this right now. So if you remember in our intro video how none of the 12-volt devices within the camper worked, well, do you want to guess what that problem was? And this is a really common problem on A-Liners, and I'm assuming on other campers. So you have your battery, right? And then your battery, the cables that go to the trailer go back to that kind of like a junction box within the trailer, and then it goes to that power converter. So, but if this fuse right here, if this fuse is blown, yep, it ain't getting back there. And so one of the things that you're going to want to check, so if you have, and this is kind of the symptoms of it, if you don't have any 12-volt devices working within inside your trailer, but you plug into Sure Power and those 12-volt devices work, it's something between the battery, you know, and that power converter. So check this fuse right here. So you basically just open it up and then pull it out. Once again, you know, if you can disconnect your battery, you'll be better off. But pull that out, check for the continuity of that fuse. If that fuse is blown, then just replace it, put it back in again, and you're good to go. All right, so let's talk about troubleshooting now your 120 volt system. So we already did some basic troubleshooting. We got into that power converter box and we checked the breakers to make sure that none of them were tripped. But there really probably should have been something that we had done first, and that's just to check to make sure that the power at the campsite, so making sure that breaker hasn't tripped and making sure that breaker is on, as well as making sure that you're actually getting power from that breaker or from that power box. So if you look at our A-Liner, on the power cable itself that plugs into the camper, we get a red light here. That means that it's getting power. Also, if I look at the prong that connects basically to our surge protector, you're going to see that that is also illuminated blue. And so if that isn't plugged in, you're not going to get that illumination. You can also check your surge protector, right, just to make sure that that is also getting power. And so if all of those things are getting power, well, you know your trailer is actually getting power. So let's do some additional troubleshooting. All right, so one of the things that you want to check for within your A-Liner or camper, if one of your 120 volt outlets or appliances isn't working, is check the GFCI to see if it's been tripped. So I'm not sure exactly when A-Liner started adding GFCI circuit protectors in their campers. I have a 2022. I think somebody with like a 2018 or so didn't actually have this protection, but this is really nice. And this is commonly what you see in households as well, especially in areas like kitchens or bathrooms. So basically what happens is if, you know, a particular appliance or something is pulling too much power and there's a chance of it overheating or causing an electrical issue, the GFCI will trip and then it will turn off that outlet. So first of all, probably what you want to do is check just to make sure that all of your outlets are getting power. So I have just a little device here. I can plug it in and it kind of tells me that, you know, the continuity is correct, it's wired correctly, and everything's good. And so I can go through all of my devices, all of my outlets within my camper and outside of my camper, just to make sure that everything is getting power correctly. Now, if one of these outlets isn't working, I can actually trip the GFCI, so let me go ahead and do that. Now, once I've tripped it, you're going to see that it's colored, so there's an amber color there. Now that outlet isn't actually getting any power, and so if I plug this in again, then we don't have any power. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is just make sure that none of your GFCI circuits have been tripped, and then untrip them. Probably want to check to see actually what caused that tripping event, but sometimes, yeah, weird things happen in campers, and sometimes you just have to reset them and you're good to go. Okay, so let's talk about a popular topic, which is boondocking or dry camping, or just like an extended stay at a campground that, you know, doesn't have full hookups. So first of all, you're kind of limited to the battery. So depending on the battery that you have, batteries are rated as like 100 amp hours, 200 amp hours, and depending on whether or not you have a lead acid battery or not, like I said, the lead acid battery, you can only use 50% of its full charge. Now I have a lithium battery, I can use 100% of that full charge, and it's lighter. So I have a 100 amp hour lithium battery on the tongue, and it's actually, it's basically provides twice as much power as a 100 amp hour lead acid battery. Nevertheless, if you are boondocking, you're going to need to find some way probably to keep your battery topped off. Now, one of the popular ways of doing so is with a generator. Now, a generator can be powered with either gasoline or with propane gas. So there's kind of like dual fuel generators, and typically generators are rated depending on how much wattage they put out. So anywhere between probably 1,500 watts up to maybe 7,000 or 8,000 watts. You're likely, for your A-liner camper, you're probably not going to need anything more than about 3,000 watts of output in order to power your entire camper. But those generators are loud, they're noisy. You have to have gas in them. Typically, you could only run them at certain times of the day or night. And sometimes, campgrounds prohibit them altogether. Now, the benefit of having a generator, though, is you can use your AC. So if you have enough gasoline, if you have enough power on the generator, you can use all of your 120 volt appliances as well as your 12 volt appliances. So that's one of the benefits of a generator. Now, if you are going to be a minimalist camper and you're just going to take the 12 volt appliances and just use those, but you want to be on an extended stay, you still need to find a way to keep your battery topped off. And typically that's when solar comes into play. Now, all A-liner campers, and I think maybe some other campers, come with this thing called a ZAMP port. And this is basically for portable solar panels with a ZAMP brand that have a special ZAMP connector. Now, the one thing about the ZAMP solar panels, I think they're really well made. They're American made, but they're kind of expensive. So I think, for a kind of a plug and play solution that you don't have to do anything else with, I think ZAMP is a good way to go. If you want to use some other brand, there's some other things that you have to use and have to do. You might need a polarity switcher as well as a solar charge controller in order for you to do it correctly. But nevertheless, those are kind of your options for using solar. Now, something relatively new, and it's relatively inexpensive, and the prices are going down all the time, is getting some sort of a power station. Now, the benefits of the power station is, unlike a generator, it's quiet, so it doesn't make any noise. And typically your power stations come with the actual power station itself, which is kind of a lithium battery with an inverter all built in. So it can actually provide 12 volt power as well as 120 volt clean power directly from this power station. And often they come with solar panels as well. So we actually have 200 watts of solar panels. That's what this particular one is. And this plugs directly into our Jackery unit. And so this is what charges up the lithium batteries and the Jackery. So this is a pretty good investment. Now, this will not run your AC for any extended amount of time. It can run the AC and it can run the microwave. This is actually 2,000 watts. It's the Jackery 2000 Pro. I think it actually has the ability to go up to 3,000 watts if you have an AC unit or something that requires kind of some peak power at startup. But this won't power my AC except for maybe a couple of hours. So I'm not going to be using this to power our AC units, but I am going to use this maybe to top off our battery, as well as, let us use our microwave, so something for very short periods of time. This works really well. All right, so I did promise you some of the common problems that A-liners have with electrical systems, and so yeah, that's what we're going to cover now. I did already cover this, but I want to cover it again just because it happens so often. So yeah, if you don't have any 12 volt power to the appliances inside of your A-liner or camper, right, check the fuse that is connected to the battery that goes back just to make sure it's not bad. Now, I did talk about my battery being a lithium ion battery, some of the benefits of lithium. So this really isn't the problems, but I want to talk about this just real briefly. Some of the benefits of a lithium ion battery, they're a lot cheaper nowadays. Unlike a lead acid battery, you can use 100% of the power in it. They're a lot lighter than regular lead acid batteries, but there are kind of some issues with them. First of all, it's helpful to have a power converter that has a charging profile that supports a lithium-ion battery. If you don't, it's not going to charge it up to 100% and it's going to take a long time. So my power converter actually doesn't support this, but I find that if I charge this fully before I go camping, I don't really need to charge it at all because, you know, it lasts so long. If I do have any sort of issues, I do have a separate charger for this particular battery, and I can plug it in to a regular household outlet or find a 120 volt outlet, and it will charge it relatively quickly. The other thing that you want to be careful of with these lithium-ion batteries is they can cause problems with the alternator in your car. And so if you are using the 7-pin connector and you plug in and it's going to attempt to charge, your alternator is going to attempt to charge the battery, this could actually fry, your lithium-ion battery could actually fry your alternator. So there's some precautions that you need to make. Now I'll be covering upgrading, or I might be covering upgrading from a lead acid battery to a lithium-ion battery. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, please let me know and I can create a video for it. Secondly, we have this battery disconnect switch. So I talked about that a little bit as well. So this is a really nice feature to have on your camper. I also may consider doing a video on installing this. So if you are interested in that, please let me know. So let's go inside and talk about a couple of other common problems. All right, so another problem that I had with my A-liner is with the fridge. And I guess this is actually kind of common with A-liners that have the GFCI protection. So I talked about the day beforehand how I like to plug in and get my refrigerator cooled down. So I was plugged into a 120 volt and I turned my refrigerator on. And let me show this to you. I'm going to actually trip the GFCI port. And I turned my refrigerator on and look what happens. So it's on auto, so it should automatically switch to AC power, and whoops, it went right to gas and was trying to use the gas and the 12 volt power, so I couldn't figure that out. And so yeah, as you saw, if that GFCI port gets tripped, it's part of it, so it looks like it's getting electrical, but it's only getting 12 volt. You can't really tell. So as soon as I turned it off, and I got this actually from one of the A-liner forums, and I untripped the connector, and then I turned it back on again, goes to auto, and then it senses that it has alternating current, and it goes directly to it. So yeah, that was pretty funny. Now I haven't had this particular problem, but this would be the similar. So this is our microwave, and you can tell we're getting power, right? And so if this GFCI port over here gets tripped, no power, right? So then I reset that GFCI port, and we have power again. So yeah, if you ever have any problems with devices, check those GFCI ports first. All right, and the last problem that I want to talk about that I had with my A-liner, it actually really wasn't my A-liner, it was actually my tow vehicle, but let's talk about this. So this is the magical and mysterious 7-pin. So this is what connects to your tow vehicle. So typically you'll have a round 7-pin receiver on your tow vehicle, and this basically, it sort of attaches to your brake controller. I have a wireless brake controller, but you know, it allows your A-liner to have the turn signals, to have the brake lights, the running lights. It allows it to give it electricity for the electronic brakes on your trailer, so it's really important. The other thing it does is this connects to the battery on your tow vehicle, and then it provides 12 volt power to your trailer, so you can actually use your trailer kind of as it's running, so it'll power your fridge, but it'll also charge your battery, so it does a lot. Now, interestingly enough, one day we're getting ready to leave our campsite, and you know, I typically do what I normally do. I plug in my 7-pin, and you know, typically you'll hear kind of like a little ding as it connects to your tow vehicle because it connects to the 12 volt power, and I wasn't really hearing that. So I was like, that's weird. So, you know, I checked this connection again, I pulled it out, pushed it back in again, I looked at the pins, all kinds of stuff, and I couldn't figure it out. And, you know, I went and checked to make sure that I was getting power to my trailer. I had no running lights, I had no brake lights, I had no turn signals. You know, my brake controller wasn't working, and so it would be unsafe for me to drive. And I was 1,000 miles from home, and I was like, what am I gonna do? So, you know, of course, I just got out my toolkit, you know, thinking that was gonna fix something. Maybe I'd get some inspiration from having my toolkit out, got my fuses out. I went to the fuse panel inside the trailer, looked at all the fuses were fine. I was really stumped. But then I was like, for some reason, I thought, let me look inside my tow vehicle. Let me, you know, pull the hood and see what I can see. And of course, my wife was like, what are you gonna do there? So let me show you. Yeah, so anyway, so I got inside my tow vehicle and I was looking at the battery, and then look what I found. Uh-oh, we got a fuse, right? So anyway, so this is what connects, your battery connects to the 7-pin connector that then goes back to the trailer, and it provides all the things that it needs to do in order to provide power to your trailer, to control electronic brakes, all that stuff, right? If this fuse has blown, which it did, okay, then none of that stuff's gonna work. So basically I pulled it out, I looked at it, yep, there was no continuity in the fuse, replaced it, everything was fixed and we're ready to go. So it turns out what happened is I was, on this particular trip, I was wanting to run my 12-volt fridge because we were going from one kind of campground to another, and I wanted to keep my fridge closed or working. And so yeah, I had the fridge running, and so it switched to 12-volt power. And I guess the particular Dometic fridge that we have, it pulls a lot of power off of that 12-volt connection. And the fuse that I had in my battery, it really couldn't handle it, and so it blew it. So yeah, haven't done that since. I probably could just change out the fuse and I'd probably be okay, but at this point I didn't really want to risk it. So that's one of the things that you want to check is if if all of a sudden your 7-pin isn't working, check the fuse on your battery on your tow vehicle. That might be the problem. So I really enjoyed creating this video, kind of covering the basics of your electrical system in your camper, and doing some troubleshooting. If you have any ideas for future videos, make a comment and let me know. And I hope to see you in the next one again very soon.